inspires parents and teachers across the country. Competence-based education was introduced with the promise of nurturing skills, creativity, and real-world competence, moving Kenya away from exam-heavy past, but as the system enters critical transition points, especially at a senior school, questions are being asked about preparedness, fairness, equity, and trust. I am Jeffrey Kimaiyu Somba, and this is EBN TV Explainer, takes you inside the art of reform, its vision, its struggles, and its growing pains. We explore why the shift from 844 was deemed necessary, how CBE is structured, and where the system is facing pressure under the weight of implementation challenges. This is not a story of failure or success alone. It is a story of a nation in transition, grappling with change that will shape the future of an entire generation. Stay with us as we unpack the cracks within and the possibilities that lie beyond them. And we're looking at the history of education reforms in Kenya. And to understand CBE, one must first understand where Kenya is coming from. At independence, Kenya inherited a colonial education system designed not for innovation or national development, but for administrative efficiency and social stratification. Education served as a gatekeeping mechanism, sorting learner into narrow pathways with limited mobility. And in 1985, Kenya introduced the 844 system, replacing the 7423 structure. The promise of 844 was revolutionary at the time. It aimed to make education practical, self-reliant, and relevant to Kenya's socio-economic realities. 8 years of primary education, 4 years of secondary education, and 4 years of university were expected to produce skilled, adaptable citizens. And however, over time, the system became increasingly exam-driven. National examinations evolved into high-stakes, life-defining events. Teaching narrowed to test preparation, creativity, critical thinking, and vocational skills were gradually crowded out. Success became synonymous with grades, and failures became stigmatized and permanent. By the early 2000s, cracks in the 844 system were impossible to ignore. The exam culture and its consequences. Kenya's exam culture under 844 created intense pressure on learners, parents, and teachers. National exams did not merely assess learning, they determined access to elite schools, universities, scholarships, and even social status. Entire family futures were pinned on a single examination cycle. This pressure distorted classroom practices. Memorization replaced understanding. Coaching centers flourished. Teachers were judged by mean scores further than learner growth, or even rather than learner growth. Those who did not perform well, often due to socioeconomic disadvantage rather than lack of ability, were quietly pushed out of opportunity. Public dissatisfaction grew, but reform proved difficult. Exams were deeply embedded in Kenya's social and political fabric. Removing or reducing them felt risky, even dangerous. The emergence of competency-based thinking globally, and these education systems were changing. Countries across Europe, Asia, and Africa were rethinking what it meant to be educated. In the 21st century, employers increasingly valued problem-solving, communication, adaptability, and collaboration over rote knowledge. Kenya began to ask uncomfortable questions. Why were graduates struggling in the workplace? Why did academic success not translate into innovation? Why were talents in sports, arts, and technical fields marginalized? These questions formed the philosophical foundation for a shift toward competency-based learning, education that measures what learners can actually do, not just what they can recall. What is competency-based education, CBE? Competency-based education is an approach that centers learning around clearly defined competencies, knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that learner must demonstrate through performance. Progression is based on mastery, not time spent in class or ranking against peers. In CBE, learning is continuous, formative, and learner-centered. Mistakes are part of growth, not permanent level of failure. Assessment becomes a tool for improvement rather than punishment. And for Kenya, CBE was envisioned as a system that could reduce exam anxiety, recognize diverse talents, promote lifelong learning, align education with real-world needs, and from 844 to CBC to CBE. The rationale behind the shift is that the transition was not abrupt. Kenya first introduced the competency-based curriculum, and this is CBC as a curriculum framework. Over time, CBC evolved into broader competency-based education CBE system encompassing assessment, progression, placement, and pathways. The rationale was threefold in that first, skills and critical thinking. Kenya needed learners who could analyze, innovate, and adapt, not just pass exams. Second, real-world competence education and to connect to life beyond school and employment, entrepreneurship, citizenship, and community engagement. And third, equity and inclusion. The system aimed to reduce the winner-takes-all nature of exams and offer multiple pathways to success. The vision was bold, the execution would prove far more complex. And we're looking at the structure of CBE in Kenya, whereby CBE organizes education into developmental stages rather than rigid academic leaders. Learners move through early years, middle school, junior school, and senior school with increasing specialization as they grow. And senior school introduces pathways designed to respect learners' interest and strength. And we're looking at the issue of STEM, whereby we have social sciences, arts, and sports science. And in theory, the structure allows every learner to find a meaningful trajectory. In practice, it has raised serious questions about capacity, fairness, and readiness. How learners are assessed under CBE assessment and under CBE is continuous and multifaceted. Teachers observe, document, and evaluate learner performance across tasks, projects, and activities. Learners build portfolios that reflect growth over time, and instead of grades and marks, learners are placed into performance levels indicating stages of competency development. The goal is descriptive feedback rather than competitive ranking. The Kenya Junior School Education Assessment (KJSEA) becomes a critical milestone, contributing to senior school placement while reflecting cumulative learning rather than single exam sitting. This shift, while philosophically sound, has proven difficult to communicate and operationalize. The CBE grading system and public opinion, and for many parents, grades were familiar, tangible, and trusted. Performance levels, by contrast, feel abstract and unclear. What does approaching competency mean for child's future, and how does it compare across schools, regions, or socioeconomic context? And we're looking at the public opinion as how it's reflecting this uncertainty. While some welcome reduced exam pressure, others fear that the lack of clear ranking opens the door to subjectivity, manipulation, and inequality. And that is part one of Unpacking the CBE Transition. And part two of the same is a grade 10 transition. The moment the system was put on trial, if there was a single moment when the competency-based education system faced its most intense public scrutiny, it was the transition of learners into grade 10. This was the first large-scale test of whether CBE would move learners forward smoothly, fairly, and transparently. What was meant to be a milestone of progress quickly became a national flashpoint. Parents waited anxiously for placement messages. Learners, uncertain about their futures, oscillated between hope and fear. Schools struggled to interpret guidelines that were still evolving. The transition process exposed a system under pressure, revealing both the ambition of the reform and the fragility of its execution. Transition logistics and placement mechanisms. And the grade 10 placement system was designed to match learners to senior schools pathways based on interests, demonstrated competencies, and available school capacity. And in theory, this represented a significant improvement of the exam score-driven selection of the past. In practice, the logistics proved daunting. Digital platforms experienced delays, and inconsistencies. Some learners were placed in pathways they had not selected, while others were assigned schools far from home without clear explanation. And appeals mechanisms were poorly understood and response times were slow. For many families, the system felt distant and opaque. Decisions were made, but the reasoning behind them remained unclear. Allegations of corruption and illegal levies. As confusion spread, allegations emerged that some schools were demanding illegal fees for or exploiting parental desperation to influence placement outcomes. These reports fueled public suspicion and anger. In a reform built on trust and fairness, even isolated cases of corruption have an outsized impact, and that they reinforce fears that the new system, like the old one, may still reward connections and money rather than merit and competence. Public dissatisfaction and perception of unfairness, and that in public dissatisfaction did not arise solely from technical glitches. It is stemmed from deeper perception that the system was being imposed faster than people could understand or adapt to it. Parents had also questioned whether learners from well-resourced schools had an unfair advantage in competency assessment, and learners worried that subjective evaluations might disadvantage those who were shy, under-resourced, or taught by outstretched teachers. Fairness once again became the central concern. Implementation issues. The teacher at the center. No education reform succeeds or fails in policy documents alone. It succeeds or fails in classrooms. Under CBE, teachers are expected to shift from content delivery in facilitation, mentorship, continuous assessment, and detailed record keeping. For many teachers, this transition has been overwhelming. Teacher capacity and training gaps. While the government rolled out the training programs, many teachers report that the sessions were brief, theoretical, and insufficient for the scale of change required. Some received training years before implementation with little follow-up support. Others were expected to train colleagues informally, creating inconsistencies in understanding and practice. And now, the new assessment tools, digital reporting platforms, and performance descriptors added to the workload. Teachers found themselves spending more time documenting learners' progress than engaging in meaningful instruction. The result has been uneven implementation across schools and regions. Teacher workload and morale. CBE demands intensive observation, individualized feedback, and frequent reporting. In overcrowded classrooms, this becomes nearly impossible. Teachers handling 50 or more learners are expected to track each child's competencies in detail, a task that strains both time and morale. As expectations rise without corresponding support, frustrations grows. Some teachers fear that poor implementation will unfairly reflect on their professionalism, even when challenges stem from systemic limitations. Classrooms realities under CBE, and in well-resourced schools, CBE can come alive. Learners engage in projects, group work, presentations, and hands-on activities. Creativity flourishes, confidence grows. In undersourced schools, however, the picture is starkly different. Limited materials, constrained practical learning, and teachers revert to lecture style instruction, undermining the philosophy of CBE. The gap between intention and reality widens. Infrastructure and resource constraints. CBE assumes the availability of laboratories, where workshops, libraries, sports facilities, and digital tools, yet many public schools lack even basic infrastructure. Science practicals are stimulated on chalkboards. Art and sports pathway exist on paper but not in practice. The shortage of laboratories and specialist equipment is particularly acute at the senior school level, where pathway specialization demands significant investment, regional inequities, and educational justice. And these infrastructure gaps are not evenly distributed. Schools in urban and affluent areas have far better equipped than those in rural, arid, and marginalized regions. And without targeted intervention CBE risks inequalities it is sought to dismantle. And for learners in the region, choice becomes an illusion. Pathway exists, but access does not serve as information and guidance, and gaps between parents and learners. And one of the most persistent challenges has been communication, whereby many parents and learners admit they do not fully understand how CBE works and how assessments translate into placement, or what pathway means for future careers. Guidance and counseling structures are underdeveloped, leaving families to rely on informal networks. And in an environment of uncertainty, misinformation spreads quickly, and the psychological cost of uncertainty beyond logistics and policy. There is a human cost. Learners navigating adolescence already face identity, peer, and academic pressures. Unclear pathway and uncertain futures amplify anxiety, and for some, the promise of CBE feels distant. What they experience instead is confusion, delayed communication, and fear of being left behind. Part 2. And welcome back. This is part 3 of Unpacking the CBE transition, and we are talking of the government assurances. Defending the reform as a public concern, as it intensified, the government moved to reassure the nation that the transition to competency-based education was not only on course but necessary. Education officials emphasized that no reform of this scale could be perfect at inception and that challenges were expected in the early phases. The official position remained firm. CBE was not being reversed. Instead, we refined, strengthened, and improved through the continuous feedback. The state framed the turbulence as evidence of the transformation rather than failure. Official narratives in the policy justification and that government spokesmen highlighted data points intended to inspire confidence. Chief among them was the claim of near universal transition rates from junior school to senior school, and according to the official figure, the vast majority of the learners eligible transition, and this presented as one of the priority system, and authorities also emphasized expanded teacher training programs, ongoing infrastructure investments, and the digitization of assessment and placement processes. In policy language, CBE was described as learner-centered, inclusive, and future-oriented. Yet beyond statistics, public perception remained divided. Parliamentary oversight and political pressure, and Parliament became a critical arena for debate. Education committees summoned officials to explain delays, placement anomalies, and corruption allegations. Legislators from both sides of the aisle voiced concerns raised by constituencies, particularly those from rural and marginalized areas. Some lawmakers questioned whether the country had moved too fast. Others warned that abandoning the CBE would waste billions of shillings already invested. The debate was less about ideology and more about execution, equity, and accountability. Church leaders and moral authority that Kenya's religious institutions also entered the conversation, and church leaders drawing on their grassroots reach and moral authority issued statements urging caution, dialogue, and compassion. They warned that education reform must not traumatize learners or destabilize families, and in sermons and public forums, religious leaders calls for clearer communication, protection of the poor, and the ethical and governance of the transition process. Their involvement amplified public scrutiny and has called the society weight of the reform. Civil society and education advocates and civil society organizations and education experts offered more nuanced critics. Many supported the philosophy of CBE but argued that implementation had outpaced preparation. Reports highlighted gaps in teacher readiness, infrastructure disparities, and assessment credibility. Advocates called for independent audits, phased rollout, and stronger stakeholder engagement. They cautioned that without corrective action, public trust in education reforms could erode permanently. Media's role in shaping the narrative, and that the media became both a messenger and watchdog. Investigative reports brought hidden challenges into public view, while human interest stories gave voice to anxious parents and confused learners. Television panels, radio calls in, and opinion columns reflected a nation wrestling with change. At times, sensational coverage, hate and fear, and others, it forced accountability. And that the CBE debate played out nightly on screens across the country, making education reform a kitchen table issue. Success stories where CBE is working amid controversy, and there are schools where CBE is not just functioning but flourishing. In these environments, learners demonstrate confidence, creativity, and collaboration. Projects replace cramming. Talents once sidelined are now celebrated. Teachers in such schools speak of a renewed power purpose. Learners engage more actively in class, parents report reduced exam anxiety and improved communication with teachers. These success stories through an evenly distributed offer a glimpse of what CBE could become: nurture talent beyond academics, and one of CBE's most profound contributions has been the recognition of non-academic strengths. Sports, music, drama, visual arts, and technical skills are no longer extracurricular afterthoughts for some learners. This recognition has been transformative. Students previously labored weak under exam-centric systems are now thriving. Their confidence grows as their abilities are validated. And in these moments, the promise of CBE feels tangible and deeply human. Near universal transition, where success or statistical comfort. Government figures celebrating near universal transition are both impressive and contentious, while high transition rates suggest inclusivity. Critics argue that placement alone does not guarantee quality education or meaningful choice. The question remains, are learners transitioning into environments that can support their pathways, or are numbers masking a deeper structural problem? For many observers, transition rates are a starting point, not a conclusion. The tension between optimism and reality, part 3 of the CBE story, defined by the tension. And on one side stands optimism. I believe that reform, though messy, is necessary and ultimately beneficial. And on the other stands lived reality, uneven resources, confused stakeholders, and fragile trust. Both our truths coexist, and it is within this tension that the future of CBE will be decided. Part 4 of Unpacking the CBE transition. And we're looking at the comparative analysis whereby CBE versus the 844 system. And to fully grasp the magnitude of Kenya's education transition, one must place competency-based education alongside the 844 system. It seeks to replace. These are not merely different curricula, they represent fundamentally different philosophies of learning, assessment, and human potential. The 844 system that was linear and hierarchical, or hierarchy, and learners advanced through clearly defined stages measured primarily by standardized examinations. Success was comparative. Students were ranked against one another, and opportunity narrowed at every stage. CBE, by contrast, is developmental and descriptive. It emphasizes mastery, progression, and individualized growth rather than competition. And this philosophical shift is at the heart of both the promise and the resistance surrounding CBE. We're looking at the grading and assessment, whereby from numbers to narratives under 844, grades were numerical and decisive. A single exam could determine a learner's future. While this system was criticized for its harshness, it was also widely understood. Parents knew what an A meant. Schools knew how to prepare for it. Employers trusted it as a screening tool. CBE replaces grades with performance levels and competency descriptors. Assessment becomes a narrative of growth rather than a snapshot of ranking. Learning are evaluated over time across contests and through multiple modes of demonstration. This approach humanizes assessment, but it also introduces complexity, whereby without careful standardization and communication, narrative can feel subjective, inconsistent, and opaque. fairness and comparability concerns, whereby one of the strongest critics of CBE is the challenge of comparability. In a country marked by deep inequalities, can performance-based assessments be fairly different learning environments? Under 844, inequality existed, but it was mediated through a single standardized exam. Under CBE, assessment quality depends heavily on teacher training, school resources, and institutional support. Without safeguards, learners in under-resourced schools risk being assessed by a system stacked against them. This concern has fueled public anxiety and demands for stronger oversight. Learner identity and self-worth, and in the old system shaped the learner identity through ranking. High performance is internalized success, low performance often internalized failure. This dynamic, by emphasizing progress rather than position, for some learners this shift is liberating. They are no longer defined by a single score. For others, particularly in competitive contexts, and the absence of clear ranking creates uncertainty about their standing and prospects. Education in this sense becomes not only a technical system but a psychological one. The role of the Kenya Junior School Education Assessment, this is KJCA. KJCA occupies a pivotal position in the CBE framework. It serves as a bridge between junior school and senior school, combining continuous assessment data with national benchmarking. In the theory, KJCA balances flexibility with standardization. In practice, it has inherited the weight of public expectation once carried by KCPE and KCSE parents, and school scrutinizes its outcomes, searching for clarity and fairness. And how KJCA efforts will significantly shape public confidence in CBE, and why the differences matter for national development. The differences between 844 and CBE are not just academic, they reflect competing visions of Kenya's future. One prioritizes selection and elimination. The other prioritizes development and inclusion. And in a rapidly changing global economy, Kenya faces the challenges of preparing learners for jobs that do not yet exist, technologies not yet invented, and social problems not yet fully understood. CBE aligns more closely with this uncertain future, but only implemented with integrity and equity. Then the social mobility and access to opportunity under 844, that education functioned as a narrow leader. Few climbed to the top, many fell along the way. CBE promises a wider pathway with multiple routes to success, yet access to these pathways depends on infrastructure, guidance, and societal acceptance. Without this, the promise of social mobility risks becoming rhetorical rather than real. Resistance to change and nostalgia for uncertainty, whereby resistance to CBE is not solely about flaws in implementation. It is also about nostalgia. The old system, for all its shortcomings, was familiar. Its rules were clear. Its outcomes, however painful, were predictable. CBE disrupts this certainty. It asks society to trust process over results, growth over ranking, and patience over immediacy. And for many, this uncomfortable leap, what Kenya stands to gain or lose if successful. CBE could redefine education in Kenya, unlocking talent, reducing exam trauma, and aligning learning with national needs. If it fails, it risks deepening inequality, eroding trust, and destabilizing a generation of learners. That's part 4 of it. In a short time, we're doing the last part. Then we get in. And then the last part of it, which is part 5 of the same, and it's all about policy responses, adjusting without abandoning. And as debate around competency-based education intensified, policymakers faced a difficult balancing act: how to acknowledge legitimate concerns without derailing a reform already deeply embedded in the system. The dominant policy position has been one of adjustment rather than reversal. Government officials have emphasized that CBE is a long-term project, not a one-off intervention. Policy responses that are focused on refining assessment tools, improving communication, and strengthening institutional capacity. The language of reform has shifted from certainty to responsiveness. The recalibration reflects an implicit recognition on that early implementation underestimated the complexity of systemic change reform. Recommendations from policy forums, task forces, and education summit have produced a growing body of recommendations, where chief among them is the call for standardization without rigidity, clear national benchmarks that still allow for learner-centered flexibility. Stakeholders have also proposed reducing teacher workloads through better digital tools, deploying specialized assessment officers, and expanding continuous professional development. There is the broad consensus that teacher support is the single most critical factor in CBE success. Strengthening teacher training and support future reform efforts increasingly center on teachers not as implementers of policy but as co-designers of the system. Recommendations include longer practical-based training programs, mentorship models, and stronger feedback loops between classrooms and policy makers. Without sustained investment in teacher capacity, CBE risks becoming a theoretical framework disconnected from classroom realities, addressing infrastructure and equity gaps. Infrastructure investment remains a defining challenge. Policy proposals stress the need for targeted funding to marginalized regions, expansion of laboratories and workshops, and equitable distribution of learning materials. Equity is no longer framed as a moral aspiration alone, but as a practical necessity. A competency-based system cannot function where competencies cannot be practiced. Improving information guidance and communication, and one of the clearest lessons from the transition is the cost of poor communication. Future directions emphasize strengthening guidance and counseling services, whereby simplifying public messaging and involving parents earlier in the process is transparent. Communication is essential not only for understanding but for trust. Reforming the transition and placement system and the Great Transition experience has prompted calls for more transparent, auditable, and responsive placement system. Recommendations include clearer appeals mechanisms, real-time communication platforms, and independent oversight to deter corruption placement. Stakeholders argue that must be seen to be fair. Future directions for competency-based education. Looking ahead, the future of CBE depends on whether it can evolve from a contested reform into a shared national project. This requires moving beyond technical fixes to deeper cultural change. CBE asks Kenyans to rethink success, intelligence, and achievement. It challenges deeply held beliefs about merit and reward. Such shifts take time, patience, and dialogue. Lessons learned from the transition. Several lessons that stands out first is that reform must move at the pace of understanding, not just policy timelines. Second, equity cannot be retrofitted. It must be foundational. Third, trust is as important as infrastructure. Perhaps most importantly, education reform is not a destination but a process, one that demands humility, adaptability, and collective ownership. The child at the center of the system, lost amid policy and debates and political exchanges, is the learner. CBE at its core It's about children, their curiosity, their confidence, their capacity to imagine futures beyond limitations. When the system works, it affirms dignity. When it fails, it fractures trust. The true measure of CBE success will not be in reports or statistics, but in the life experience of learners across the country. Mending the crack within the crack. Kenya's education transition is not of collapse, but of tension between vision and reality. Whether that crack widens or it is repaired depends on choices made now by policymakers, educators, parents, and society at large. CBE remains a bold experiment in redefining education for a changing world. Its survival will depend not only denying its flaws, but only on confronting them honestly and courageously. Final reflection and a future still being written. Kenya's competency-based education journey is still unfolding. It is a story of aspiration, disruption, resistance, and possibility. Like all great national reforms, it is imperfect, unfinished, and deeply human. The question is no longer whether the CBE will shape the future of education in Kenya. The question is how well and for who will it work? This is The Crack Within, Unpacking the CBE Transition. My name is Jeffrey Kimaiyu Somba. Coming up next is the EBN weekend, or not weekend, but the midweek report. Thank you for staying around. Operator is Laura Omonti. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commissioner, ABC Erastus Ethekon, said the commission is in the final stages of preparing a roadmap to guide them come 2027 general election. He stated that the plan currently is undergoing legal review reforms being approved by commissioners. Ethekon emphasized that the plan is inclusive and seeks input from key stakeholders, including the media, religious groups, civil society organizations, political parties, and judiciary, to ensure free and fair election. He also noted that the Commission's main responsibility is to ensure citizens elect their leaders freely, transparently, and in accordance with the Constitution.
The reason why the numbers are low is because of the way we have set up our centers and the distances, and that young people, we are making an assumption, and that these days maybe they are lazy to walk the distances that some of us used to. So we're introducing a digital platform where now you have a link and then you have a pre-registration form. You can fill it like right there. You can fill in all your details, and all you need to do is to walk into the next Huduma center or registration center and just give your fingerprints and you go. We just take your biometrics, 3 minutes, we are done. So I hope that will also encourage the young people to come up and register in large numbers. So we will be informing the young people once we are done with that system. So we are saying therefore that election preparedness is not done in isolation, and I have emphasized the role of other actors, including the religious community. So we will continue to engage with you, civil society, political parties, the media, security agencies, and development partners to ensure that.
And moving on, President William Ruto has announced plans to introduce tax relief for low-income earners. He said he will table a proposal in Parliament to exempt formerly employed Kenyans earning 30,000 Kenya shillings and below from pay tax. This move aims to ease the cost of living as the government continues to reform the tax system. The president said the exemption will enable low-income workers to take on more pay and promote a tax system that is responsive to citizens' needs.
We are now saying that any Kenyan who earns less than 30,000 shillings will not pay any taxes. Number two, we are saying any Kenyan who earns up to 50,000, we are reducing their taxes from 30% to 25%. 1.5 million working Kenyans will not pay any taxes. 500,000, another 500,000 working Kenyans will have their taxes reduced from 30% to 25%. That is how progressively we are going to make sure that we manage the cost of living so that the people at the bottom of the pyramid, we can be able to support them. Wakati tulisema bottom up, it was not a slogan.
Maraga accuses Kenya Kwanza government of widespread corruption. And UGM party leader David Maraga has accused the government of misgoverning the country, citing poor leadership. And speaking in Vinungwani, Kwale County during a voter registration drive, Maraga said corruption has become rampant in government department and blamed public servants for looting public resources. And according to Maraga, the government has allowed corruption to become entrenched in government departments, with civil servants allegedly looting public funds, contributing to poor service delivery in key sectors like education and healthcare. He said that the country's economic and social challenges are not due to lack of resources, but because money meant for schools and hospitals has been misused or lost to public or to corrupt practices.
Zaidi nataka kusimamisha wizi wa pesa ya serikali. Wizi wa pesa ya serikali nataka kusimamisha kabisa. Kenya si masikini. Kenya si masikini. Ni pesa ambao ile ambayo inatakikana kwenda kwa shule ya watoto wetu inachukuliwa na watu binafsi, wanaenda kufanya mambo yao. Mumeona mara nyingi pesa zinalipwa kwa shule ambayo haiko. Pesa zinalipwa kwa hospitali ambayo haiko. Na wananchi wanaendelea kushangaa na kutopata ile huduma ambao wanatakikana kupata.
Hawa wenyeji vuguvugu wa pwani wanaongea kwamba hali ya uchumi imezorota, lakini wao wako na shamba, hao wako na madini, hao wako na bidhaa. Tuwaonyeshe na tuhakikishie ya kwamba wakati utakaochukua ushukani, wewe ni kiongozi, ile madini, ile minerals, ile red rubies ambayo iko huku, ya kwamba lazima ikuje isaidie wananchi wa Kwale, isaidie wananchi wa pwani, ndio ilhali ya kwamba uchumi ya nchi hii, ya sehemu hii ikuje juu.
And on a sad note, American Christian worship leader and songwriter Ron Kennedy has died at the age of 81. The internationally renowned gospel musician reportedly passed away on Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026, with the news confirmed by several artists through his social media. Tributes have poured in from across the Christian music community, with fellow worship leaders and musicians describing Kennedy as a defining figure of an entire generation, whose music shaped their worship journeys. Born on December 6, 1944, in Coffeyville, Kansas, he rose to global fame in the 1980s and 1990s, known for leading massive live worship events that influenced churches, especially in Africa. Ron Kennedy will be remembered as a giant of gospel music whose voice, spirit, and message of praise inspired countless worship leaders, musicians, and believers worldwide. And doctor strike disrupts health services in Somba Bay, and public health services in Somba Bay County have been disrupted after doctors began a strike. About 60 doctors donned their tools following the expiry of a 21-day strike notice issued to the county government. The chairperson of the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union KMPDU Somba Bay branch, Dr. Rogers Otana, said the county owes doctors over 7 million in salary arrears. In addition, Kenya 6 million in union deductions has also not been remitted. Doctors have insisted they will not return to work until the demands are met, leaving thousands of patients without services at public hospitals.
Makes us strong. Solidarity. Of the 7 agenda items that we raised in our strike notice, only one was conclusively addressed: the matter of promotions and redesignations. But of the 7 others, and the most important one is the matter of arrears. The county government of Somba Bay owes doctors arrears to the tune of about 7 million. They also owe the union another 6 million. And until they pay up, until they pay all our members their arrears, we are going on strike.
And government says it is continuing efforts to build a modern, resilient and inclusive economy through reforms in health, public service, industry and citizen investment. Government spokesman Isaac Maura said recent measures including digitization of health services and payment of pending government bills reflect a renewed commitment to economic growth. He added that the steps aim to address current economic challenges while laying a strong foundation for long-term sustainable development.
Also, in addition, the Treasury has approved 255 billion to clear pending bills and boost businesses. This is very important for our people. The government has approved 255 billion to settle long-standing pending bills to suppliers and contractors, easing cash flow pressures and restoring confidence in public procurement. 80 billion has already been released for roads, and 175 billion will be progressively cleared after verification, supporting business nationwide. Remember, we had actually a business outlay or claims of up to 600 billion, but a good number of them were found to be fake, about 57%. They could not be verifiable. But the rest that have been cleared, now we can see they are being paid, and actually 98% of these claims were below 100 million Kenya shillings. So it's very, very good. The other thing that is also very good, the government, through the Trade Cabinet Secretary, Lee Kenyanjui, has announced that Kenya's new automotive policy will allow Kenyans to buy brand new vehicles at price equal to or lower than 8-year-old imports. And this, for sure, is because of Isuzu, which has positioned Kenya on the global map as the first country outside Thailand to manufacture MUX model. I don't know whether you pronounce MUX or MUX. With local assembly incentives reducing its price to by 27% from 13.5 million to 9.9 million. No, if you get this 9.9 million, it's almost the same price with 80-year-old models. So this is actually going to promote affordability and strengthen local manufacturing. So there's a lot that the government is doing, and we remain committed to ensuring that we put our focus on that. As you know very well already, there's an IPO for KPC. Please buy the shares. We want to ensure that we have proper infrastructural development.
And a coalition of churches held conference bringing together religious leaders, UNICEF and the Ministry of Gender and Culture to discuss alternative ways of protecting children and following reports of child rights violations, such as early marriages and female genital mutilation.
There was an arson. We were here through the night, and I want to bring to your attention that all is well. We have come to the situation. One of our dormitories had caught fire, but the firefighters came to the rescue, and now there's no fire in the school. We managed, there were 20 boys that were affected by the smoke. They were not in the rooms. In fact, they were doing their preps. So when they heard there was fire, they ran out of the the rooms, the classes, and so some of them were affected by the smoke.
I'm Dr. Cheptumo, the Cabinet Secretary for Gender, Culture and Children's Services. We are here today as the Ministry of Gender, Culture and Children's Services, together with the religious organizations. Yes. So we are here together with the religious organizations and our partner UNICEF to launch a book on safeguarding our children. We have met today because the protection of our children is very key. The Constitution of Kenya, Article 53, the Children's Act 2022, the policies that we have in place, together with the teachings which are there in the churches, in the mosque, and in the temples,